Now we start now. Okay. Now I will this is around a 40-year-old gentleman. No, he's what is his occupation? That is, he's a wage laborer. We'll going to do a symptom analysis main symptom analysis. So when we start, what is the importance of age and the sex? Both are very important. Now, suppose the same thing comes with a female patient who comes with this sort of a complaint. What is your take on it? A female of 40, same, it's a male. Now, if it's a 40-year-old female who comes with abdominal distension and jaundice, now what are the things you are going to think of?
A female could be autoimmune disease. Autoimmune diseases. Hepatitis.
Autoimmune disease, okay. Then what else? Others can also answer, not only the presenter. All from, especially from M3 unit and others also, anybody.
Liver failure itself, ma'am.
Okay, we'll come to that point later. Now, chief complaints are abdominal distension and yellowish discoloration. That is, so what are all the possible complaints a patient with abdomen can present as? We're going to do in-depth analysis of all the symptoms a patient with abdomen related patients, what are the complaints they can have. One is abdominal distension.
Abdominal pain, distension, hematemesis, melena.
Hematemesis, very good. Melena, then?
Diarrhea.
Diarrhea, very good. Then? Dysphagia,
weight loss.
Excellent. Weight loss, very good. So these are the main things that it comes. So now when we talk, number one, we are going to talk of abdominal distension. Now abdominal distension is, 50. What are all the causes of distended abdomen? What are the 5 F's?
Fetus, fluid, food,
Yes.
flatus,
fat. Yeah, so you can have any of these abdominal distension, or it can be some mass which is going to cause abdominal distension. Suppose if it is a mass which is causing abdominal distension, or it is a fluid or something cause, how are you going to differentiate?
Mass will be more located to a single quadrant or 2 to 3 quadrants, ma'am.
So this is the important. So whenever we are going to talk of abdominal distension, one, we are going to talk whether it is, what is the duration, how is the onset, whether sudden or insidious, and as a gradual, and third point, whether it is the diffuse in nature, whether it is uniform or a non-uniform distension. Now here, when there is a uniform distension, now we know that it is something which is generalized. So in a background of a jaundice with abdominal distension, and if a patient is obviously alcoholic, so we can easily point out like it can be a fluid which has accumulated in the abdomen. So this uniform is and non-uniform. So initially itself we can make out what is the cause of distension. So that is the thing. And not associated with abdominal pain. And what is the other thing? Not associated with?
Dyspnea.
Dyspnea. Now, suppose if there is abdominal pain, what are all the types of abdominal pain you can have? And then we'll correlate here.
Ma'am, starting from right hypochondrium, it can be due to tender hepatomegaly.
Okay, very good. So one tender hepatomegaly. Then?
Or gallbladder pain can also be present in right hypochondrium.
Okay, yeah, cholecystitis. That's what you're trying to mean. Yeah, then?
Then epigastric pain would be GERD, pancreatitis. Even myocardial.
How will the pain of a pancreatitis be?
It will radiate to back.
Yeah, it will be a severe abdominal pain which radiates to the back. That is your typical history of a pancreatitis pain. It's one of the very severe pain which you will experience. Okay, then.
Uh, then around the umbilical region, acute
Yes.
appendicitis,
Okay. For initially it will be around the umbilical, and later it may
right iliac.
look it. Yeah, yeah. That. Okay. Then what are the other pieces?
Then it can be uh, aortic dissection. Myocardial infarction can also radiate to epigastric.
Yeah, that will be epigastric pain. In aortic dissection, what is the pain you will get?
It will also be a very
A tearing
Yeah,
type of
somebody else
pain
answered.
radiates to the
Yeah.
back, interscapular
Again,
area.
it will be a interscapular, again, more in the chest, and it will be a tearing type of pain, extreme pain, which will be like radiating to the back, in the chest, more of a chest pain sort of thing. Okay, now then what else? Abdomen pain relevant to your case? You said there is no, not associated abdominal pain. Good. So relevant to your case, tell me what abdominal pain you are going to think of.
spontaneous
So I
bacterial
give you a
peritonitis.
yes. So how will the pain of a spontaneous bacterial peritonitis be?
It will be a diffuse pain.
So it will be a diffuse pain. Yeah, that is one thing. Then suppose if there is a splenomegaly, what sort of a pain you will get? You
Dragging
may get a
sensation.
dragging.
Flagging.
Yes, yes, a dragging pain. Okay. Now, abdomen case is not only DCLD. Okay. It can also be your hematological problems like chronic myeloid leukemia. That is a massive splenomegaly. So, when you are seeing abdomen, it doesn't mean only DCLD. So, you should always be open in your mind. Now, if it is a peritonitis, like how will the typical pain be? On examination, how will it be?
On
Suppose if it is a,
palpation, when we remove our hand, the pain aggravates.
yes, there will be a rebound tenderness. And
Rebound
suppose if it is
tenderness.
a perforation, yes, there will be guarding rigidity. He will not allow, the patient will not allow us to do. Okay. Now, then not associated with dyspnea. Is it very relevant? Should we say it with the abdominal distension? So, what are you trying to bring out? I don't think not associated with dyspnea is relevant here. So, till this is okay.
It could be
15 days
associated
inferior.
pleural effusion. No? It could be associated pleural effusion. No?
Okay. So, that is why you wanted to bring out this not associated with dyspnea. Not much relevant, but others are all okay. 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 So that is okay. Accepted. So abdominal distension and then abdominal pain, if it is there, then we'll go to the yellowish discoloration of sclera. So what are you trying to bring out? It is jaundice,
Jaundice.
correct? Jaundice. So yellowish discoloration. Whenever there's yellowish discoloration of sclera, it is jaundice. Can you define jaundice?
Jaundice is the yellowish discoloration of skin and mucous membranes due to increased bilirubin concentration in the body fluids when serum concentration of bilirubin exceeds 3 milligrams per deciliter.
Okay, so more to 1.5 to 3. So it is clinically visible when it is more than 3, but you call jaundice when it is more than 1.5 milligram per dl. Now, and associated with yellowish discoloration of urine, I think high colored urine will be a better terminology.
Okay.
So what do you mean by this yellowish discoloration of urine? Even a concentrated urine will be yellowish only, no? So what are you trying to bring out this with this history of pale colored stools or high colored urine?
To differentiate between obstructive jaundice and
So
hepatic cause.
obstructive jaundice. So what about the type of jaundice? Then we'll come back to here. What are all the types of jaundice you know?
Pre-hepatic, hepatic, and post-hepatic.
Okay. So, so hemolytic jaundice, hepatocellular jaundice, and obstructive jaundice. Yeah, that's yeah. So these are the three. So how will it be in obstructive jaundice?
In obstructive jaundice, direct bilirubin will be increased.
So what will be the typical history? That is what you said. Not associated. You have to.
Pale color stool.
So there
Also,
will be
there will be
pale
itching.
colored and high. Itching is associated, and there will be high colored urine. If you see the urine of a patient with obstructive jaundice, you'll see that it is almost reddish yellow, no? Almost like a hematuria. You may even mix it up for hematuria. That high colored it will be. Why is it so high colored?
The bilirubin is
Conjugated bilirubin.
Yeah, because of conjugated bilirubin, yes, which is soluble in water.
Water.
That is why it comes out in the urine. So it is the bile salts and bile pigments which are coming out. That's why you get that high colored urine. But because of obstruction, it is not coming in the stools, intestine. And also, why is there itching in obstructive jaundice?
Due to increased bilirubin.
That, or bile salts which deposits in the
Cholestasis.
skin. So that is why you get that itching. Now we'll come to hemolytic jaundice. In hemolytic jaundice, which bilirubin is high?
Indirect bilirubin. Unconjugated.
Unconjugated bilirubin, which is not soluble in liquid. It is not soluble in water. So what happens? Your color of the urine will be pale only, and you will get the normal colored stools. Okay. Now, when we see the sclera itself, we can tell whether it is a hemolytic jaundice or an obstructive jaundice. How do you make out? Usually,
Lemon yellow color.
yes, lemon yellow in your hemolytic jaundice. That is when there is unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, and it will be almost like dirty green, yellowish green in obstructive jaundice. Now, in between there is an entity called hepatocellular jaundice. In this, you can have both the phases. It can be in a pre-hepatic phase, or it can also come to the some amount of obstruction may be there. So here you have given the history like there is an yellowish discoloration associated with high color. This yellowish discoloration of urine doesn't mean anything. It's either high colored urine or normal. Okay, not associated with this. So this gives us a clue that it may be a hepatocellular jaundice. Now, what is the nearest baby for a jaundice?
Hyperkeratinemia. Beta-carotenemia.
Hyperkeratinemia. How are you going to differentiate whether it is the keratinemia or it is due to jaundice?
Hyperkeratinemia will spare the sclera.
Yeah. Why does it spare the sclera?
The beta carotene doesn't bind to the scleroelastin, ma'am. Ma'am?
That's why you get the bilirubin, no?
Yes,
It will bind to the sclera.
Elastin of sclera.
That is why the elastin of sclera, and that is why you get that yellowish discoloration. Now, it is not associated with fever. That is what you are given. What is the duration of jaundice? It is 10 days duration. So, now suppose a patient comes with jaundice. What are all the possibilities you are going to think of? Now, let us okay, very good. Now, let us, we'll first talk about the etiology and then come to symptom analysis. It will be easier. Now, suppose if it is a hemolytic jaundice, what are all the causes of hemolytic jaundice?
Hereditary spherocytosis, sickle cell anemia.
Okay.
Thalassemia.
Thalassemia. So anything which is related, that is when there is a hemolysis, it is basically the liver is normal. It is the RBC, the problems with RBC which is going to cause the jaundice. So the RBC, it can be easy to remember is first damage to the walls, what are the problems, then damage to the enzymes and the genetics. So it can be either heterospherocytosis, elliptocytosis, or it can be your for G6PD deficiency, pyruvate kinase deficiency, or it can be your thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, all these, no? That is one part. Then you can have autoimmune hemolytic anemia. All that can be a part in jaundice. Now, suppose if it is a hemolytic jaundice, what is the history you are going to get?
There could be some
Will
drug.
it be in a very old? One good. So there will be history of drug. There will be some history of drug intake followed by this. Will it be in an older age or will it be in a younger age? All the sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, all
Younger
these
age.
hereditary disorders. Yeah. So this is 40-year-old male, so it will be obviously be in a younger age group. What is the jaundice presentation in G6PD? What is the history like? G6PD deficiency patients will be apparently normal only when the stress occurs, they may land up with jaundice. Like which drug can precipitate jaundice, hemolytic anemia in G6PD deficiency?
Quinine.
Quinine.
Quinine, ma'am.
Quinine or what? Huh?
Sulfur drug.
Dapsone.
Sulfur drugs, okay. Trimethylene, no?
Chloroquine.
Or anti-malarial when chloroquine or more of them. So these are the drugs. So there will be one history of drug. The history will be there followed by jaundice. Okay. Then we come to hepatocellular jaundice. In hepatocellular jaundice, what are the causes? Now you can tell all the causes.
Viral hepatitis, leptospirosis,
Viral
malaria,
hepatitis, leptospirosis.
malaria,
What more?
malaria,
Malaria. So all infections, your hepatitis, or it can be a drug-induced hepatitis, or it can be your toxins. What are the toxins? Alcohol.
alcohol,
Then your paracetamol. All these it can be drug-induced. So many causes are there. Now the commonest or most frequent presentation or most frequently what we see is viral hepatitis. What is the history of in a patient with viral hepatitis?
fever, jaundice,
Yes.
right
So usually
hypochondria,
the patient, yes. So it will be a fever, nausea, vomiting. That will be the presentation. Usually fever, nausea, vomiting. From the second to third day, there will be mild jaundice. That is yellowish coloration. The jaundice can develop, and because of the hepatomegaly, you can have a right hypochondrial pain. And then usually it is a viral infection, so usually it can either resolve, or of course there is what are the viruses which causes chronicity? Maybe all the viral
hepatitis B,
hepatitis. Yeah, B, C, and D.
D.
C and D and D will always be together. Okay. So hepatitis C. One thing about hepatitis C, it's a very dangerous thing because it may cause mild infection like any other normal viral infection. Means you will not even get jaundice. It usually resolves, but the chronicity occurs. Hepatitis C is one thing which causes a lot of damages, but initial presentation we may miss it because they don't typically present with fever, jaundice and all. Hepatitis B, of course, it's a bloodborne infection. You have to be alert, bloodborne and sexually transmitted. You have to be alert of the possibility. So there they may come with fever, jaundice, or what all the symptoms I said. Either they recover or they go for a chronic infection. Then hepatitis E. Certainly something about hepatitis E.
It is
Very high
one
mortality in pregnancy,
fecal
ma'am.
Yeah, very good. So it is actually fecal-oral route of presentation, and usually fever, jaundice, it is mild and otherwise, but in pregnancy it causes high mortality. So that is about hepatitis. Then obstructive jaundice, what are the causes?
gallstones or
Okay.
carcinoma head of pancreas.
Yeah, so anything, no, from anywhere, from common bile duct to till it goes and goes to the duodenum, I think, till that part, if there is any obstruction anywhere due to mass or whatever, you will get obstructive jaundice. So these are few causes. So whenever we are talking of jaundice, all this history. So when if jaundice is there in serious, usually what happens is when you see typically the patient is attendant who notice that the patient is developing yellowish discoloration. So that will be the typical history you will get, or he would have had a binge of alcohol or something, and they'll land up like that, and that is how it will be. Suppose if it is a viral jaundice, viral hepatitis related jaundice, there will be some typical history of fever, nausea, vomiting associated with jaundice. So that is the history we will get. So here it is a jaundice, 10 days, associated with yellowish discoloration does not make a point. Either it is high colored urine or not a high colored urine, and not associated with pale color stool and itching. What we are trying to bring out is that there is no obstructive jaundice. Okay, the next history.
Melena for the past 3 days.
Okay, tell me something. Define melena.
Black, tarry, sticky, foul-smelling stools.
So it is a black, tarry, sticky to the pan with a foul-smelling stools. So that is called melena. How much amount of blood loss should be there to cause melena?
60 ml.
Is it an
60
upper
ml.
GI bleed or a lower GI bleed?
Upper GI bleed.
Yeah. So 60 ml of, it's an upper GI bleed above the, how do you classify whether it's an upper GI or a lower GI?
Above the level of ligament of trees is the upper GI.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Whether it is upper GI or lower GI. So should be minimum amount of blood loss should be around 60 ml to cause malaria. Why is it black tarry stools? Why does it become black and tarry?
Because of acid hematoma. The blood is digested.
Yeah. So yeah. So that is it. Usually for 60 ml of blood loss, how many days the melena goes on?
1 week now.
So yeah, only for minimum of 3 to 4 days there will be the thing. Can a upper GI bleed present as a frank blood per rectum?
It can present ma'am when bleeding is very high and which is associated with increased intestinal motility.
Yeah, so when there is increased intestinal motility, usually there is 8 hours gap before it comes, but if it very fast, it can present as bleeding per rectum also. But normally it is melena. What is the DD of a black colored stools?
If patient is on iron or bismuth therapy,
Yeah, so these are the DD. Now, how will you differentiate if it is the patient is on iron therapy? It's very common, no, in our sector.
it wouldn't be foul smelling.
Usually,
Pour water.
number?
On pouring water, ma'am.
No, I don't understand.
Red
No,
discoloration.
black is black.
He'll also complain of
Maybe,
constipation and dyspepsia, ma'am.
yes, well, iron intake patients will have more of constipation. It will be a formed stool. In fact, it will be a hard stool. Okay, that is how one of the few symptom-wise differentiating factors, whether it is melena or this black color stool due to other causes. Okay, now tell me something about hematemesis. What is hematemesis?
Blood and vomit.
Blood and vomitus, it is called hematemesis. Okay, now I think yesterday in theory class, or was it, okay, how do you differentiate hematemesis from hemoptysis?
Hematemesis, food particles would be present and it will be,
Yeah, one food particle should be present.
color would be dark brown. Also, it will be mixed with
Okay, very
saliva.
good.
Food either.
Okay,
Hemoptysis
then, yes,
would be red in color, sputum,
okay,
and microbial debris and
and
epithelial
sputum.
cells will be there.
Okay, that is microscopy. So there will be frothy, hemoptysis will be frothy. Whereas here, yeah, pH, what happens here and there? This will be acidic.
Hematemesis
Yeah,
will
that
be
can be.
acidic in nature.
Yeah. So it's very important, no? This hematemesis and hemoptysis is very important because even a massive hemoptysis patient usually they swallow blood and that blood also can come as hematemesis. Now your treatment itself, your even the pathology, everything is different when it is hematemesis and hemoptysis. So it's very important that we differentiate. Any hemoptysis patient or any hematemesis patient for that matter, if you ask the history, they'll say, I coughed a bit and after I coughing, we passed out a big amount of blood. So differentiating is a very important thing in the bedside time. Okay, now we know that it is hematemesis. Tell me all the causes of hematemesis. What are all the possibilities? What are all the causes of
Septic ulcer
hematemesis?
disease,
Very good. So
malariasis,
septic ulcer disease. Then
Esophageal varices.
esophageal
what is that?
varices. Huh?
Esophageal varices. Then what is that? Esophageal tear and all that. No, in which
Malariasis.
condition you get that?
Yes.
Yeah.
In
Where do you
repeated
get that?
vomiting and vertical laceration on esophageal wall.
Okay. So usually it is very common in alcoholics and pregnant women. No, you may have. So usually they'll come with severe chest pain and they may have a bout of this hematemesis. Then your septic ulcer disease and varices. Now here in our patient, in a patient with a liver involvement of cirrhosis and focal hypertension, we may get hematemesis and melena. So melena is upper GI bleed. Suppose this same patient comes with fresh blood per rectum. So what are the possibilities?
Hemorrhoids, ma'am. Or coagulopathy, the patient.
Yeah, hemorrhoids. So hemorrhoids. Yeah. So because of this photosystemic shunting, in all places, no, it can. So wherever the photosystemic shunting is there, so when the pressure increases, it will let go. So most common one is hematemesis. The other, the upper GI bleed can manifest as melena, or when there are hemorrhoids, they may present as fresh bleed per rectum. Now, suppose a patient comes with massive hematemesis. Comes to the casualty, comes to the emergency department, and usually the CRRIs are the first medical officer to receive the patient. So how will you manage the patient? So whenever a patient comes, after a time, okay, of course you have to give that, but before that, always stabilize the patient. Any person who sees blood, no, they'll be panicked. They'll be in a very agitated state. So first, when they come, you have to see whether their airway is intact, whether their breathing is proper, how is the BP. Now we check the BP and it is found to be 180 with a pulse rate of around 120 per minute. So is it normal or is it abnormal?
Hypovolemia.
What is the pressure here? The BP I gave you.
20.
20.
20. Is it narrow or is it normal?
Narrow pulse.
Narrow.
So here you have a narrow pulse pressure. Though systolic seems to be still in the normal range, still the pulse pressure is narrow. The patient is having a tachycardia. So the next thing what you should do, you can see for postural hypotension. When the patient is in supine position, maybe normal. So make the patient sit up and check the BP, maybe in the 90, 70 or something like that you will get. So this shows that the patient is in a compensated shock. So you immediately set a line and then you start. Now, what is the treatment? Basically, octreotide and all, of course, it's there. But for the blood loss, it is only blood for blood, right? If there's a massive, you have to replace. But it doesn't happen in a minute or so. No, it takes 1 or 2 hours. You have to take a blood, then you have to do a cross matching, and then you have to bring the blood. It takes 2 hours time. In between that, you have to immediately start infusion of first normal saline. Then you have what are the other things available? Equivalent to blood. What can we put?
Crystalloids.
Colloids
Colloids.
is normal saline, or colloids is like you can put that Hemaxil and all is available. No, that should be done, and of course always blood for blood. In the meantime, if you are confirmed that it is suppose this is this for sure it is a case of portal hypertension causing, you can put octreotide. Now suppose if it is other like peptic ulcer disease, you are going to give H2 receptor blockers or PPI, all that specific treatment. So why am I covering that even at the stage of symptoms? These are few basics you should always know. We cannot afford to make blunders when we are in the emergency department. Even all these such simple measures can at least save the patient, so that you can do the next further procedure to bring out the patient. Okay. So there is so when you, vomiting is important. So we finished hematemesis now. Now coming to vomiting. Something vomiting. So where all you will get vomiting? Now it is a protective mechanism. Projectile vomiting. It can project vomiting.
Increased ICT will produce projectile vomiting.
Increase intracranial tension. So vomiting, then suppose a patient complains, I'm having vomiting whenever I take food. After some time, all the food will come. Then after 2 hours, I vomit again, the food will come. What is your comment?
Gas.
Ma'am, I get you.
Ma'am?
Ma'am?
Yes. Yeah, tell me.
What did you just
What is
say,
the
ma'am? It
cause
was
of
cut off.
this? Vomiting. Okay. When they vomit, food particles come. Then after 2 hours, the patient has vomiting, again particles come. Now, what do you think if such a history comes?
Gastric outlet obstruction.
Obstruction.
Gastric obstruction. So that may be the cause of this sort of a vomiting. So whenever if there is a vomiting present, whether it's associated with the food intake and where there is a setting associated or it's a projectile vomiting, all that history becomes important in GI. We'll go to dysphagia is a very important topic on its own. It's not the like hematemesis. It's so important, one of the very important histories. So suppose a patient comes with dysphagia. So what do you mean by dysphagia?
Difficulty in swallowing.
Okay, already you have finished ENT, so you will have an idea about all these dysphagias. Now, when a patient says, I have difficulty in swallowing, you will have to ask at what level. Usually, the patient will tell clearly that up to here I'm taking, and beyond that I feel there is an obstruction. They are very clear. One. Then, next we have to ask is whether it is for solids or for liquids. Now, patient says, I'm able to take solids and I'm not able to take liquids. Or patient may say otherwise, that I'm taking liquids but not taking solids. Now, what is the impression when you have such a dysphagia?
Mechanical obstruction or neuromuscular cause.
Yeah, very good. So, whether it's a mechanical obstruction or a neuromuscular problems of dysphagia, you should know. We will not go into depth. Tell me some causes of dysphagia.
Strictures. Webs can be
Okay. So,
any mass present on the esophagus.
so one, it can be strictures. One, as she says, cause for strictures.
Ingestion corrosives.
Yeah, very good. So when there is past history of ingestion of corrosive, then it can cause strictures. Then if there is any mass obstruction causing the esophageal narrowing, what is the cardiovascular cause which can cause dysphagia? Cardiovascular condition causing dysphagia.
Pancreas enlargement and
Yeah,
metastasis.
Yes, left atrial enlargement. Very good. That is oddness. Oddness is going to be rather your hoarseness of voice, right? So Enema? Okay. So dysphagia. Then what are the other causes? A patient, female around 50 years comes with anemia with dysphagia.
Lumbar-Wilson syndrome.
What will you think? Okay, very good. Lumbar-Wilson syndrome, where there will be deaths. So history of dysphagia has to be given importance and has to be evaluated very thoroughly. Of course, then bloating. Bloating is due to what? That is fullness after taking food. So usually it is due to peptic ulcer diseases. Okay. Okay. Now next we'll go to diarrhea and constipation. I think these two are very important symptoms in your GI. So when define diarrhea.
Increased frequency of passing.
Increased frequency of stools, or increased frequency and consistency also. I mean, liquid consistency more than three times or something like that. So you call it as diarrhea. Now, it is not that you should have many many episodes of diarrhea to patients who land up with dehydration. We are very worried about dehydration because it's a very treatable condition, but if you don't treat, it may land up with a lot of problems and patient even may come, there may even be death. Now, suppose if it is a rice watery stools, what is it due to?
Cholera.
Cholera, very good. Now, even a single diarrhea is enough for a patient to come with a hypotension and shock. So diarrhea is one thing we should be very careful, and we should take history and rapid correction if it's a moderate dehydration. Start giving them fluids, and all that is very important. Now coming to diarrhea and dysentery, what is the difference between diarrhea and dysentery? What is dysentery?
Blood in stools.
Yeah, so if there is a blood and mucus in your stools, then it is dysentery. And usually, what is the cause for dysentery?
Amoebic dysentery or bacterial dysentery due to Shigella.
Yeah, so it can be usually some pathological infections which may cause your dysentery. Whereas diarrhea, there are a lot of causes. It can be a small bowel diarrhea, it can be a large bowel diarrhea, then it can be your diarrhea due to all this malabsorption. So there are a lot of diarrhea itself is a separate big topic to be discussed. But you should know that importance of diarrhea in a sense that how to manage if there is a dehydration and relevant. Then constipation. Constipation again, you should know the definition. And beyond that, I think for you as a familiar, there is not much in at least your clinicals. Okay. Why did you ask history of fever, chills and rigors in this patient?
Malaria.
Okay. So to rule out malaria, you asked for fever, chills and rigors. Okay. Loss of weight and loss of appetite.
To rule out malignancy.
Why do you ask for it? Very good. So you have to think of malignancy, which can be either primary. The commonest usually malignancies are the GI malignancies. Very common. That too, large bowel malignancies are very common. And it may have secondaries in the liver, and that may also present. So whenever you see ascites and all that, you should just not be like just thinking only in terms of BCLT. You have to also think of other conditions. Now, suppose a patient gives a history of recurrent, vomiting, then diarrhea. It can be like on and off they'll be getting, with a history of fever, with night sweats, with the loss of weight and loss of appetite, and now coming with abdominal distension. So what will you think of?
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis. So we should never forget tuberculosis here. So it's not only no history of fever, chills and rigors, not only malaria, and also you have to rule out tuberculosis also. So that is very important. Now, easy fatigability. So any chronic condition, you are going to get easy fatigability. Why no history of seizures?
Patient could be on medications.
Okay. So at the past history, what is more relevant history you should have put? Now, what is the complication of cirrhosis or portal hypertension? What are the complications?
Hepatic encephalopathy.
Yes, a hepatic encephalopathy. What is the history you will get?
Altered
Patient
sleep
feel drowsy, altered sleep pattern.
Yes. So instead of no history of seizure, you can bring it in past history. As you said, you want to rule out toxicity, acute liver injury, or chronic liver failure. So here, no history of altered sleep pattern will become very important. Okay. Then no history of puffiness of face, reduced urine output. Now that will come higher up in the list. Okay. So you have put like how you should. So in your presentation, you have said positive histories. After positive history, no history of hematemesis, no history of bleeding per rectum, no vomiting. This should be followed by no history of pedal edema and facial puffiness. And no history of oliguria will come next, and then only no history of dysphagia, bloating, constipation, fever, all that will come. This should come very much higher up in your negative history. And no history of syncope, chest pain, palpitation. Why are you asking this history?
The role of cardiac causes now. Constricted
Very
pericarditis
good. So
can
we want
present
to
in the
put out
same
the
way.
cardiac. Yes, cardiac cause, respiratory cause, all that will come in the end. So whenever you are going to present, now again summing up all this. So whenever you are going to present the history of presenting. First, the chief complaints. Always you should follow the chronological order, and then you are going to come to the history of presenting illness. When you are going to present the history of the presenting illness, you are going to first tell all the positive findings, and then the relevant negative. So relevant negative, how will you start it? Relevant negative, first related to whatever you're thinking. Then other system involvement will come in there. In between, what are the other possibilities, what you're going to think should come in between. If that is the flow of presentation, it is very nice. Okay. Now we'll go to the past history. Yeah, tell me the past history.
No history of similar episodes in past. No history of TB,
Okay.
diabetes, hypertension, asthma, seizures, rheumatoid arthritis, sexually transmitted infection. No history of blood transfusion or tattooing. No previous history of surgery.
Okay. Now, in past history, no similar history in the past, very important. Now, suppose this person gives uh, 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 I had history, 1 year back I had abdominal distension, then I came to got treatment, I became all right, and now I come again. Now, what is your impression? Now, cirrhosis with hypertension. Patient became all right, now coming again. So, in other words, a patient is in cirrhosis portal hypertension. What are the factors which will worsen the condition?
High protein diet, ma'am. Infection.
Oh, high protein. Infection is very important. High protein, all of us, even maximum people who take non-veg also, our protein intake is limited only. Okay. One is infection, which can be either as related to ascites, that is spontaneous peritonitis, or it can be a bout of hematemesis, which may precipitate or worsen your hepatic failure, or it may be a binge of alcohol. No, why I am telling that is, suppose the past history, there is a history of similar episode 1 year back. Then when we are talking of this presenting illness, 15 days apparently he didn't have any ascites, now he has developed ascites. So what is the precipitating factor? Was it, now here typically you have a history of melena. So compensated cirrhosis has decompensated because of some blood loss. So that is how you are going to analyze the what is happening, blood loss or fever or whatever it is. So that gives us an idea that something has precipitated this event. And then, of course, all these chronic diseases. What is the importance of TB? One, TB as a cause. Second, APP or hepatotoxic. No, what are the hepatotoxic drugs?
Rifampicin,
Yes, there is a
isoniazid,
hepatotoxic drug.
methotrexate, methyl
Very
dopa,
good.
zidovudin.
Yeah. So, okay. So there are a lot of drugs which are hepatotoxic. So that history is very important. diabetes, hypertension, asthma, seizure. Okay, all this is important. Then jaundice is there. So if it is usually hepatitis B is a cause of chronicity, and usually it may later land up with cirrhosis and portal hypertension. So what is the history you should ask is history of it is transmissible by your promiscuity. So there is no history of any sexually transmitted illness or no history of promiscuity, no history of blood transfusion. Tattooing is very important. Then drug addiction and all, where they share their needles, that is very important. No history of previous surgery. So all these past history is a must in any abdomen case. Then personal history.
Patient consumes mixed diet,
Continue your presentation.
normal sleep pattern, bowel and bladder habits are regular. Chronic alcoholic for past 15 years. He consumes 180 ml of whiskey daily. That accounts for 64 grams. He's a smoker. He smokes 10 cigarettes per day.
Good.
No history of travel, and he is not vaccinated for hepatitis B.
Okay, very good, very good. So this is a sort of a very complete personal history what you have taken. Whenever we have to see sleep pattern in in all your other system presentations and all, when we're talking abdomen, when we want to find out the hepatic encephalopathy, the only presentation may be your sleep pattern. So that will come in history of that is. Then when we talk about alcohol, it is the ml of alcohol, whether it is daily intake or it is an occasional intake, and it is in the ml you should say. Any alcohol in any form is alcohol only, whether it is a beer or a rum or whatever type, everything has some percentage of alcohol, and that alcohol is going to be cause injury. They may say I am taking only beer, but that is not so. Even beer will have some amount of alcohol, the percentage, and when you accumulate them, it is going to cause harm. So, what is the duration of alcohol intake to cause cirrhosis? Normally, you have to take around 60 to 100 ml of alcohol for every day for 8 years to cause cirrhosis. That is called a serogenic dose of alcohol. Okay. Now, what they say is the daily insults, which is more important than the binge drinking and all that. So that is about the importance of alcohol. So we should ask how many years or duration, and whether it is daily intake, which is more important rather than the binge drinking, and the quantity. All that is very important. And of course, next is smoking and not vaccinated, if you get the history. Why that history of travel? No history of travel. What is the importance of that?
He could get infections from travel.
Infection. So our country, we are already living in that, so that no history of travel is not relevant here. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe in abroad and all that will matter, but I think our presentation, of course you can put, but you should know what to tell. Okay. Then next.
Treatment.
Continue.
Family history. No similar complaints in the family, and no other significant.
Okay. Now, family history with your cirrhosis. What are the conditions which runs in the family?
Wilson's, hemochromatosis, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency.
Okay. Yeah. Then
Hereditary jaundice syndrome.
yeah, very good. Hereditary jaundice syndrome is like
Crigler-Najjar, Gilbert's.
Steuben-Johnson. Okay. Then copper
Wilson's.
metabolism related.
Wilson's, ma'am.
Wilson. So all these are. So it becomes very important when you have a Wilson's disease. Young male who comes with hematemesis. What is the first presentation of a Wilson's disease? Any idea?
Unusual clumsiness, ma'am.
Very good, very good. It will be a neurological. Whenever you, in fact, telling the definition of Wilson's disease, it will be there will be a neurological complaint. In fact, that will be the first presentation. Then it can be hemolytic anemia. Eye examination of eye, what will you get?
Keshav.
Laser fissure, cave rings only. There.
Sunflower
Okay.
cataract.
So,
The cataract
what?
also.
Sunflower cataract.
Sunflower.
Cataract. Yeah, cataract. Enamma?
Yes, ma'am. Sunflower cataract.
Sunflower cataract. Excellent, excellent. So these are also very important in the family history, treatment history, not on any medication. Okay, now summarize sentence.
40-year-old male, chronic alcoholic and smoker with no comorbidities, presented with complaints of gradually progressive abdominal distension for 15 days and jaundice for 10 days with history of melena for the past 3 days. So the probable system involved is hepatobiliary system.
Probable, so very good. So this will be in nutshell what we have seen. And usually, was there any, usually, in our group of patients, usually there will be some binging of alcohol following which they present like this. Okay. So that history will always get most of the time. And even if they don't tell, we'll have to get, usually we, unless we probe into it, we may not get such but there's a very common history which we will get in our group of patients. If it is so, we have to put that in our history of presenting illness also and when summarizing also. So we know what has caused this compensated phase to become a decompensated phase. Here there is history of melena. So there is some GI bleed which has caused this for him to develop ascites and land up to the hospital. So this is our summary. Now we'll go to the general examination.
Patient is alert, conscious, communicable, oriented to time, place, and person, moderately built and poorly nourished, pallor and ictus present, bilateral pitting period edema present up to knees, no cyanosis, clubbing, significant generalized brain pattern.
Okay. Now, patient is conscious. No, wait. Patient is conscious, oriented, and alert. Communicable, I don't think we'll go to that level. Okay. Whenever you are going to present, you can just say this is enough. Or patient in altered sensorium, patient in delirium, like that, something you can do. But communicable is sort of a new terminology you are trying to bring. So, what are you trying to bring? Have anybody told you to present like this?
No.
So I don't think communicable is required. Okay, you just say patient is alert, conscious, alert, oriented, if oriented to time, place, and person. Okay, moderately built and poorly nourished. This communicable I don't think is required. Okay, then pallor is present and ictus is present. So what does that mean? Why is there pallor? Why do you think there must be pallor?
Patient has bleeding. Also, now patient is an alcoholic, so there will be malnourished.
So now alcohol per se, what type of anemia will it cause?
B12 deficiency for macrocytic anemia.
Macrocytic, excellent. So alcohol per se will cause macrocytic. And here another clue is because of bleeding, melena we have picked up, there may be some microbleeds which is always going on. So this shows the chronicity of disease. And now patient is having jaundice and there is a bilateral pitting pedal edema is present up to knee. Okay. Then there is no cyanosis. Okay, clubbing. What are the abdomen causes of clubbing?
GI malignancy, inflammatory bowel diseases, Crohn's ulcer.
What GI malignancy? Not all GI.
Hepatocellular.
Inflammatory bowel.
Malabsorption.
Malabsorption syndrome.
Malabsorption, okay. Usually it is hepatocellular carcinoma which will cause clubbing. Then okay. Then inflammatory bowel disease. What are the inflammatory bowel disease?
Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis.
Okay, good. Then What are the other causes of clubbing?
Primary biliary cirrhosis, ma'am.
Very good. So primary biliary cirrhosis. All these are causes of clubbing. Now, sir, this patient has a generalized lymphadenopathy with grade 1 clubbing, with jaundice, with anemia, with ascites. What is your impression? Somebody can answer. See, patient has jaundice, patient has anemia, patient has ascites, patient has generalized lymphadenopathy.
He has decompensated.
What should you get?
Malignancy,
Adeno?
ma'am.
Yes. What malignancy you are going to think of?
Hepatocellular carcinoma or hepatoma.
Hepatocellular will not cause lymphadenopathy. If there are
Or secondaries, ma'am.
generalized
Secondaries.
secondaries, okay. So where is the primary? What? Okay, secondary. Why should it cause lymphadenopathy? So what will you
Or
think
else
of?
lymphoma, ma'am. Lymphoma.
Lymphoma will be the possibility you should think of. Very good. Okay. So when do you call as a significant lymphadenopathy?
When there is
When when the inguinal nodes are more than 2 centimeters or axillary more than 0.5 centimeters, cervical more than 1 centimeter.
Okay. So it's very. What is Virchow's node?
Left supraclavicular node.
Yeah, which indicates what?
Gastrointestinal malignancy.
Malignancy. Okay. So that is the thing. Now we'll go to the head to foot examination. Tell me.
No alopecia, temporal hollowing, prominent cheekbones. No xanthelasma, medarosis, bite spots, keratomalacia, subconjunctival hemorrhage, or KF ring. Parotid enlargement present. No angular cheilitis, stomatitis, or atrophic glossitis. No fetal hepatitis, no bleeding gums or after ulcers. JVP not elevated.
Continue.
Spider nevite present. No gynecomastia. No loss of axillary or pectoral hair. No bruising purpura. No flapping tremors. Palmar erythema present. Dupuytren's contracture
Okay.
present. No clubbing cyanosis or leukoplakia.
Okay.
No testicular atrophy or scrotal swelling. Bilateral second edema present.
Okay. So very good. So we'll come from the beginning. So in the eyes. So from number 1. Go to your previous slide. Previous. So the first patient is so alopecia you can have, temporal hollowing, then you can have this. All this is called as what phases?
Cirrhotic patient.
cirrhotic.
Cirrhotic phases. That is what you are trying to rule out. Then in the eye you can have Bitot spots, keratomalacia, KF ring. What is this importance of this Bitot spot? Where do you get Bitot spot, keratomalacia?
Vitamin A
Vitamin A
deficiency.
deficiency.
All these fat soluble vitamins, no, that may not get absorbed, and that is causing the all these changes. KF ring, as already we spoke, it is because of the Wilson's disease. Now, parotid enlargement, why is it happening? So if there is a parotid enlargement, what does it indicate?
Thyroidinosis.
Because of
Nama?
alcohol consumption. No?
Chronic alcohol consumption.
Yeah. So these are few clues you'll get that alcohol as a cause of cirrhosis. So one is parotid enlargement, and when there is a Dupuytren's contracture, you already told so. These are 2 to 3 things which is very specific of gynecomastia. These are very few specific features for alcohol as a cause of cirrhosis. Okay, what is fetal hepatitis?
It is mousy odor from mouth due to mercaptan.
What?
Mousy odor.
Okay, why does it happen? Fetal hepatitis.
Methyl mercaptan. Because methionine is not metabolized.
Yeah. Yeah. So when there is a portal hypertension, the all the toxins are not metabolized in the liver, and it comes into the general circulation, and it causes the fetal hepatitis. Okay. Then the next, of course, bleeding gums. It's a part of your bleeding problems because of vitamin K deficiency which develop. Then next.
JVP.
Next. No. Okay. JVP. Okay. Then spider nevi. Present. So how do you identify spider nevi? What are the duration? What is spider nevi?
Central arteriole with radiating vessels. Ma'am.
Yeah. So usually it is
In
present
SVC
in the
territory.
chest and the back. Yeah, in the SVC distribution. Okay. So how do you confirm that it is spider nevi?
When we press, they blanch.
Yeah, so blanch, when you use a pinhead and press, it will blanch. So there is no gynecomastia, no loss. Now, why does gynecomastia happen?
Due to increased estrone and peripheral circulation.
Yeah, because of the increased estrogens, you will have gynecomastia. Equivalent to that in females, there may be breast atrophy. Okay. Then flapping tremor. Flapping tremor, what does it indicate? Presence of asterisk.
Hepatic encephalopathy.
Stage 2 or 3 of hepatic
Hepatic
encephalopathy.
encephalopathy. So is it very specific for liver or it occurs in other conditions also?
Respiratory condition.
Yeah, respiratory failure. Any failure, you are going to get this flapping tremor. It's not very specific, but in presence in cirrhosis indicates grade 2 or 3 hepatic encephalopathy. Okay, then you have to look for Dupuytren's contracture, then leukonychia. How do you test for testicular atrophy? You know, any idea? How do you test? Usually there is an orchidometer, okay, for the age group. What is the normal size of testis, and from which you can test. Okay. Why do you get a bilateral pitting fetal edema in cirrhosis?
Due
Due
to
to protein loss, ma'am. And also RAS is activated, so sodium and
Yeah,
water
because of
retention.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Tell the vital signs.
Pulse rate 78 per minute, regular, normal in volume, character, no arterial thickening. Blood pressure 100/70 mm of Hg, measured in right upper limb in sitting position. Respiratory rate 20 per minute, abdominothoracic. Temperature 97 degree Fahrenheit. SpO2 97 degree, which is 97%.
Okay, I think next class, I think we'll stop with this. Next class, I think Madam will discuss in detail about the examination of abdomen and the next, the remaining, how to diagnose, differential diagnosis, all will be discussed. I think we can stop the class here. Any doubts you have so far?
Ma'am, why do spider nevi happen only in SVC territory, ma'am?
That I don't know. But they say only in the SVC territory. But why it happens, we know that estrogen excess and all. But why only in SVC territory, we don't know. I think no book gives that.
Okay, ma'am.
Then any other doubt? Okay, I think it was a very good presentation. Geeta, I think you can, I think the next person can continue the presentation. So thank you all. And attendance, I think the representative can give to the registrar. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.